Can you explain to me why I lost $50,000 in 1 month? Where'd the money go?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Perfect RIA podcast. I am your co host and co founder, Matthew Jarvis, and with me, the man, the myth, the legend, Micah Shalansky. Micah, how are you, my friend?
Jarvis, I'm doing absolutely fantastic. Super excited. We got so many hot things cooking. Just wrapping up Surge, well, relatively a couple weeks ago, so still kind of on that debrief high of those things. We got some amazing things kind of taking place. Just did an open cart with you and some kick-ass webinars, quite frankly, that went through that were really focused about taxes. So I'm all kinds of hyped up.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Of course, by the time this airs, we'll have just come back from an Invictus mastermind in
That's
Nashville. We'll
right.
have just come back from our personal mastermind in Atlanta with several just really rock star advisors. So, always fired up and excited from that. Now, Micah, today we want to talk about how to talk with clients when their accounts have gone down in value. And this came up because I was visiting an advisor's office and I said, "Hey, show me your meeting packet. Show me the information that you show to a client during a client meeting, during a review meeting." And they showed me, amongst other things, the statement from their custodian, right? Which they all look basically the same, right? Micah,
Right.
plus minuses, gains losses for the
Bunch
month.
of worthless information.
Yeah, that's what
Yes.
I say. The only thing more useless than a custodian statement is when you log into a custodian's online portal and it shows gain losses for the day,
Or
right?
for the last 12
Yeah,
seconds, right?
just the worst information. So I asked these
Oh.
advisors, I say, if this is the information you're presenting to clients, how does the discussion go when that month is down? Let's say it's down by $50,000. How do you have that discussion with them when all they're seeing is I lost $50,000? And Mike, I was kind of surprised they didn't have a lot to offer there, which is why we wanted to do this episode today.
Fascinating. Yeah, this is something that comes up. Now, this can come up in many different ways, right? One of the things we're going to talk about is client communication because this could come up in a very simple way. You did a Roth conversion but failed to communicate it was going to come out of a client's account. They open up their IRA statement. Their IRA is down by 50 grand and the market's up, right? What are you going to say in those things? How have you set expectations with the client? Or we're going to have market hiccups like we have right now, right? Where the market is being volatile and it's going to be down for the first quarter. Great. What's your plan when you're meeting with clients in that period in time? Are you going to panic? How are you going to explain things? How are you going to give confidence? Probably the best approach would be just to give them a 72-page document, the probability of success, that these are normal things. Clearly, that's going to communicate the best answer for your client. And if you cannot tell, that was sarcasm.
That was sarcasm. Though this seems to be, and maybe this is us patting ourselves on the back. It seems to be if we rant about something for a couple times on the podcast, or at least where we look in the industry starts to move. I have now seen all of the big technology providers now offering what they call one-page financial plans, and right
Oh,
at
where
the
that came
top it
from?
says, 73% probability of success. Which, let me explain to you what that means to a client. Nothing. It means nothing
Nothing.
to them. So
Nothing. Well, and let's just say they understand probably, and this is not putting down clients, right?
no,
Clients,
no.
at least my clientele, is extremely well educated. They're extremely smart in what they do. This is not what they do. That is why they hired us, right? So we need to make it as clear as possible. And sometimes a 73% chance of success, by the way, from a well educated person, that's a C, and it might as well be a D. Right? Because come on, you talk about the school, you talk about education, they're always striving for 90+%. So now, even if you like those percentages, those are failing percentages for a large group of investors that are there. On top of they can't understand it in the entire context of things.
It also doesn't give them any. Here we're kind of on a side right here. It doesn't give them any clear direction to go. So if you say, "Oh, the
Truly.
markets," I know you lost 50,000 this month. We have issue number one there, but you know what? You went from an 83% probability of success to an 81% we're still okay. But it doesn't give the client any action. When are we not okay? At 79, at 62, at 13? What should I do? Should I spend less? Should I contribute more? What does this mean? So there's not a
Well,
translation. Micah,
yeah.
please.
I was gonna say, well, Jarvis, when it gets down to 62, what do I do? Right? Oh, okay. Like it blows up and I got to go back to work. I mean, what exactly has to happen? I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go back to the clients looking at the statement and it's down $50,000 a month for that month. Micah, the first thing I always want to do is provide context for that dollar amount. Right now, if it was a $60,000 account and it's down $50,000, we probably have a big problem here. If it's a $4 million account and it's down $50,000, it's still $50,000, right? That client still remembers when 50 grand was all the money in the world. But we can look back, if assuming you have the technology to do it, and say, Mr. and Mrs. Client, this represents about 6 months of growth or whatever period of time. We're back to where we were 4 months ago.
Yeah, I love that, right? Puts it in context. We've been here before, right?
Hmm.
One of the other things, Jarvis, I always like to tell clients is they're like, well, it's down off the high. And I'll kind of look at them and kind of be funny about it. I'll say, well, it's always off of the high, right? Because the high is the high, right? So either we're setting a new high or we're off of the high. That's it. That's the only place that we can be. And so they'll kind of laugh a little bit about that. But then we'll step back and say, hey, what has this done for the last couple of years for you, right? Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, I actually step back. I will actually lean back in my chair when I'm having this conversation because I want to show them, kind of the changing that reality. We're going to step back and look at this in a larger time period. And when we do that from 12 months ago, from 24 months, or 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, right? How much has your money grown over this period in time? It says, great. Over the last 5 years, you've grown over $1 million inside of your account. You've grown over $500,000 inside of your account. And have we seen in the last 5 years, have we seen your account go up and down before? They'll go, yeah,
Of
absolutely.
course.
So great. Perfect. This is normal. And now that they know it's normal, right?
Yes.
Now it's not this big alarm says, oh my gosh, the media is talking about this. The markets are falling. I have a friend that just lost X in the TSP and they just sold all the money out. I says, great, this is normal. Because guess what? Market volatility is normal. And it's totally fine if we have a rock solid plan.
I love that line you use, Michael. Let's take a step back and look at this, right? That's a nice, easy one to use. Another one I like to always use is I never like to use the word lost unless we in fact lost money, like we had an option that expired or something, which we don't do. So that's not an issue. I was like, say we gave back some of our growth. We had all this growth the last 3 years. We gave some of that back. Michael, what if
Mhm.
it's a new client and Murphy's Law has struck and they become a client and the market goes down several consecutive months? So you don't have anything to look back on. You can't say, look at this money we made before. All they see is, Micah, since I've hired you, I won't put your name in this. Jarvis, since I've hired you, we've done nothing but lose money. How do you handle that situation?
Boy, that's so great. All right, this is going to go back to setting expectations right now. In one of the previous podcasts, I think we just did, Jarvis, when you were in my office, we actually talked about this setting expectations. And I jokingly say I make two promises to clients whenever they're going to invest money. Promise number one is that as soon as they invest money, they start putting money in, the market's going to crash. Right. And number two, the day they retire, the market's going to crash. Right. That's Murphy's Law. So we know that's going to happen. Now, why do I bring it up? Of course, I'm not guaranteeing or promise anything. Right. This is a joke. But this is the aspect of saying we have to set expectations that we are already expecting this market to go down. Now, what's going to happen is after that, I'm going to explain and go watch our previous podcast where we go through buckets, which clearly outlines this, what our plan is when the market goes down. Now, the client retires, they've just transferred all of their money, and the market falls. It goes down 50,000, 100,000, $200,000, right? Whatever that dollar amount is. You know what they say when they come in? Wow, Micah, you were right.
You
The
told
market
me.
did
Yeah.
go down. Yeah, you told me this was going to happen. I am so glad we have 2 years of living expenses in cash. I am so glad we have 3 years in bonds, right? They're so glad they have these buckets set up that are outside the stock market because we told them the market was going to go down. Now, did we know the market was going to go down? No, not any more than anyone else knows that it's going to be volatile. But I need a plan for a couple of things. I'm just so much on a soapbox,
I love
Jarvis.
it.
Sorry. My biggest thing with the plan that we have is to keep investors invested.
Hmm.
Because here's what I know in my heart of hearts. If we hold to the plan, if we hold to a long term strategy, the market prevails over time. It just does, right? Historically, it just does. And I think that's going to keep going forward. I got a lot of faith in the United States. So, that being the case, I need a plan to keep them invested, hence the buckets, hence the 5 years of protected money that allows them their safety net. Because, Jarvis, in my opinion, I want to know your thoughts on this. The clients really don't care that they're not solely focused on their account went up and down, right? That's a superficial question. The
Hmm.
deeper question is, can I stay retired?
Hmm. Hmm. But because clients have the same head trash that we all have. We've talked on this podcast numerous
Oh,
times about
sure.
the head trash we have as advisors when it comes to implementing surge meetings or raising fees or these things. We all have this in our mind that if I do X, if I stop checking my email 10 times a day, my best clients will leave me. They'll take all the rest of the clients with me, that my spouse and my children will disown me, and I'll hold up a sign, will financial plan for food. Clients think the same way because newsflash, they're human too. And when they see their account go down, whatever that is on a relative basis doesn't matter. They see it go down. They think, at this rate, I will shortly be broke and I'll be going to my children or welfare. And that's where their head goes. And so Mike, at your point, we have to set the stage for this. If you're only talking about the war chest or buckets when the market's gone down, you've missed it. You have to
I missed it.
you have to stockpile when times are good. So either when times are good and when I'm taking on new clients, I always have this discussion with them, Micah. Right? We talk about the war chest, and I always rephrase it. I say, Mr. and Mrs. Client, Murphy's law is that when you retire, the markets will go down and they'll go down dramatically. In fact, Mr. and Mrs. Client, that's Murphy's law of investing in general. Whenever you need money, the markets will be down, and the more money you need, the further down the markets will be. And we smile and we laugh, Micah, just like you. And
Right,
that's where I
right.
look at the war chest. Hey, we have a 5 year buffer. Also, Micah helps us whatever that loss is accompanied with. So the market's down and inflation's going, the war with Russia, whatever the case is, the client says, oh my goodness, not only is the market down, but this proves it will keep going down. Cool. Do you think it will take more than 5 years to sort this thing out? And then they'll kind of stop and think about it and they'll say, no, I mean, either the whole world has ended, in which case it doesn't matter, or yeah, we've probably sorted this out in a couple years. Cool. But the
I love it.
important part here is I set this foundation before the market went down. I'm not trying to cover up. I'm really just, and Micah, you're the same way. When the market's going down, we're saying this is what we said would happen, and here's the strategy we said we would use, and we're using it.
Yeah, we're being consistent right now. This just like we could boil this back to calling a client at the time you're supposed to call the client.
Yes.
Are you doing the things you said you're going to do? This is an integrity question, right? Whether clients can articulate that or not, that's what's going on in the back of their mind. Jarvis and I, our clients will laugh because if their appointment's at 11 o'clock, we will call them immediately at 11 o'clock. And my clients still joke about me and says, you know what, they could set their clock based on when I call because I'm going to commit to what I said I'm going to do. And it's the same thing with the investment plan. These are very much correlated, believe it or not. Are you being consistent in your beliefs? Are you being consistent in your actions? Now it comes the test of fire. It says, okay, the market's down 20%. What are you really going to do? And is this really the plan going to work? If all of a sudden you start making tons of tweaks, if all of a sudden you start having a different portfolio, you start really rebalancing and doing things differently than what you said you were going to do, this is going to create a lot of or at least a lot of scarcity, a lot of fear in your clients, right? About saying, "Holy crap, what are you actually doing? Is this a normal thing that the market's going down, or is this like a oh crap a 2008 thing and I'm going to be bankrupt?"
Yeah. I think related to that, Micah, I never want to be wrong in front of a client. This doesn't mean I don't ever make
Amen.
mistakes. And we've talked about that, and when you make a mistake, how to own that. This is why I never, ever with clients do any kind of market forecasting. When do you think the markets will go up? When they start going up. When do you think they'll go down? What do you think inflation will? I have no projections on that, no prognostication. I because I want to come in with them. I never want to have to sit down with a client, Micah, and say, oh, you know what, we thought rates were going to go the other way, and now the portfolio is way off. Nope, great news. We have an all-weather portfolio that was designed for ups and downs because 3 out of every 7 years the market goes down. This is probably one of those years we were prepared for this. So don't back yourself into a corner by predicting what strategy is going to work, what thing is going to go on, because you risk being wrong. And Mike, is same with the integrity. Once the client sees that you're wrong about things, the confidence starts to erode.
I love it. Jarvis, the thing that I like to do, I'm going to go back to something you said. You say,
Please.
do you think this is going to last longer than 5 years? Right? I love that question. That's there. I like to seed it a little bit with 2008, right?
Yes.
Remember 2008, where it took 5 years to get back to even, and I'll use my fingers, right?
Yep.
8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? I'll go through it with the client. And then from there, I'm going to say, okay, do you think this is going to be like a 2008 or worse? Because I want to give them something to measure this to. You know what? I don't really think this is a total financial collapse and borderline of our banking system that we had back in '08. Okay, great. So then do we think it's going to take less than 5 years? Yes. Okay, perfect. Now, Jarvis, and we've talked about this before, but it's important on the podcast. What if they said, you know what? I don't think 5 years is enough. I think we got to have 6 years. I think we got to have 6 years of money set aside. What would you do?
Yeah, so if they want to go from 5 to 6, so our kind of rule internally, if they want to go plus or minus one allocation, right, from 70/30 to 60/40 or plus or minus one, not really a big deal. I'm willing to budget unless the markets are way. If the markets are in a deep hole, I'm really going to push back hard. If
Sure.
we're seeing a little bit of turbulence and they're saying, "Hey, I really wish this was 6 years, not 5 years." Okay, cool. Let's do that. If we're in the depths of it and they're saying, "Hey, we need to go from 5 years to 10 years," that doesn't work because now we don't have enough equity to get us out of this
Right.
hole. And that's again how I'm going to position it. I know it sounds like a great idea to get 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. The trick, if we do that, we won't have enough equity to get us back out of this hole. And I can't be. And if that keeps pushing, I'll say, hey, I can't be the captain of a sinking ship because we just won't make it out of this.
And that's a really cool part about using, and I want to get to action items with a
Mm,
client, right? Because we are just making fun of, the 100-page plans that don't give action
right.
items or clear guidance. Let's make sure we address that. But that's also one of the cool parts about the dynamic distribution rate. And Jarvis, I took this one directly from you about saying, okay, great, this is the tolerance that we have to be inside of it. Now, if a client, let's say they got $4 million and they're taking out 50 grand a year, okay, quick math, we all know they're going to be just fine,
Yeah.
right? So in that case, if a client just wants to put more money in cash because it makes them feel better, as long as it doesn't violate their distributions, I'm
Mhm,
totally fine with that,
mhm.
right? I mean, that's kind of the guidance that I'm going to have. The minute it's going to violate your potential distributions in the future, right? That equity portion we need to have, okay, now that's a red flag. No, we got to have a conversation. We got to do that. But as long as they're within their distribution model that we can move things around, sure, that doesn't hurt anything, right? So if it's going to give someone a little bit more comfort to say we have 6 years versus 5 years, great. How often do we have that? Rare. Very,
Very rare.
very rare. I
Yeah.
mean, 5 years is a nice long buffer.
Yeah, Mike, I talked about a scenario in my book about a client who called in during the middle of the COVID panic saying, Matthew, I want to go from 5 years to 10 years of buffer, which would have, let's do the math on this here. Now we're talking about like a 50-50 or a 40-60
Right.
allocation, just doesn't work. And so I said, "Yeah, we'll call her Sue. Sue, tell me a little bit more about this. I get that it's scary." And she's, "Hey, this time is really different." Blah blah blah. Anyway, probed, discovered that she has stage 3 cancer, and she was worried that she was going to die before the markets came back up. But more, so I got that layer, and I said, "Well, do you think your son, your only heir, do you think he's going to panic sell when you pass away?" And she says, "No, absolutely not. He's a smart kid." Cool. So what else is going on there? She says, "I'm
Yeah.
worried that my granddaughters won't have money for college." Ah, okay. So there's the issue, right, Michael? We talk about
Ah.
this, the issue
Right.
behind the issue. Perfect. So what if we set aside enough money in an account to cover their education? How much do you think that's going to be? I don't know. It's 200,000 each, whatever number she said. Cool. Let's set that aside in a designated account, not a corner of an existing account, a
Mm-mm.
designated account. Let's use that as our war chest, and we're set. And she was good to go. But that would have been an easy one to miss. It would have been easy to say, Sue, you have a 78% probability of success, and the blah, 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 blah didn't cover her issue of I'm going to die and my granddaughters won't be able to go to college.
Right. Which is super easy to solve for, right? Oh,
Once you get to
perfect.
it, right?
Once we get to it, right? The probing questions on this are so, so big. All right. So Jarvis, let's transition and let's talk about not action items for advisors just yet. Let's talk about the client's aspect of things, right? Let's go over kind of real quick that guardrails aspect of it
Yes.
where we have these high low numbers in here. And I don't focus on the high one too often, but that
No.
low one is so powerful.
Yeah, and the low one, and we've done some presentations on this, and you can find it in past podcasts. And of course, for Backstage Pass and Invictus members, there's countless videos in the archives on that. So,
Right.
Michael, let's say that the client has $1 million, easy math, so they're getting about $54,000 a year off of that gross. Taxes come off. Would put their lower guardrail about 800,000. And so I draw it out. By the way, any financial concept you can't draw on a piece of paper is not a good financial concept, just as a rule of thumb. So I draw that out. I say, Mr. and Mrs. Client, right now we have about a $200,000 buffer. If we get to this lower buffer because of the market going down, or maybe you take out a big lump sum of money to buy an RV and travel the country, then we'll need to tighten our belts. And you can't see this because it's off screen. I make this tighten my belt gesture. When we tighten our belt, we'll probably need to cut back on travel a little bit because your income will go from about 54,000 a year to about 49,000 a year. Now, usually I'm going to translate this into monthly numbers, but Micah, not off the top of my
Right.
head. And that way they know. So a client comes in, they say, Matthew, I know we still have 100,000 of buffer yet, but I want to do something. Cool. Let's go ahead and reduce income to that lower buffer number. You don't need to, but if you want to do something, here's something you can do.
And I love that because this allows the client to take action when
Yes.
these things are happening, right? Now they could come back in and say, "Well, I don't want to have less income. I want to go do all the things I want to do." Okay, great. Then we need to hold to our investment plan,
Hmm.
right? But this is now empowering the client with their choice of saying, "Okay, great. If we're really concerned about this, then let's take that 10% reduction in income." Another great planning tip that I use, Jarvis, is I
Yeah.
actually do the same thing when clients want to spend this money before they do it. So let's take that RV, right? They
Yep.
want to go spend $150,000 on RV. Says, great, here's what I want to do. We're going to now cut your income just like you had bought that RV. We're going to reduce it by 10% because your account had gone down in value. And let's do that for 6 months. And while you're shopping for your RV, and let's make sure it's what you want to do. Right. And if you want to talk about if somebody is really committed to buying something, have them spend the money for it, but not get the toy. Right. And then all of a sudden, this is now really real. Do I really like this or not? And it's a great check and balance with a client, especially when you have one spouse that wants it and one spouse that
Hmm.
doesn't, right? So it's perfect. Let's simulate having it, right? Let's simulate retirement. we're really big into this with our clients about looking in the future, simulating things in advance. Let's simulate that now and let's practice like we had it and let's see if you really like it or not. And guess what? If you are making the payments and you're really excited about getting the RV, this was a good decision. If you're making the payments but you don't have the RV and you're saying this sucks, I don't have the money to do the things I want and yada yada, then don't go buy the RV because guess what? After you buy the RV, you're still going to want to do everything you're doing today.
Mhm.
It's not you're not alternating money, right?
Nope.
You're saying,
Nope.
"Great, I want to buy the RV and I still want to travel to Europe. I still want to go to Iceland, right? I still want to go to all these things."
My God, you mentioned that just briefly, simulating retirement. I do that all the time when I have a client who's coming up to retirement and their net retirement income will be less than their current
Oh,
net income.
yes.
Perfect. Great news. Let's go ahead and start living on that now. We'll bank aside the difference. I am not going to go down to, I think this is where advisors make mistakes. I'm not going to say, Mr. and Mrs. Client, would you please give me your bank statement and your credit card statement so that I can line item and decide if you're paying too much for your Comcast internet? I am never
No,
going to go there. I'm going to just
no.
say, listen, you're living on 5K a net right now. You can only do 4,500 in retirement. You're going to have to figure out where that 500 goes. And just to make sure that we're real with ourselves, let's not do it cold turkey. Let's start now and ease into it. Knowing
I
these
love
small
it.
things, again, I feel like we're beating up on these big plans, but a big plan doesn't help me solve a 500 gap. Telling them to live on
Mhm.
that less now, that solves my problem.
Couple of pro tips that's inside of here. So we do what income buckets, right? Because buckets
Yes.
are just phenomenal. So we do
Love it.
income buckets with clients. And so what this is, if a client's getting ready to retire, right, we'll actually take their entire pay, 100% of their pay via allotments. We're going to put it in a Schwab account. Then from that Schwab account, we're then going to pay them their retirement
Love
income,
it.
right? Because federal employees just went from a paycheck every 2 weeks to one paycheck a month. So, okay,
Mhm.
great. Now this is different. Let's simulate this in advance. Let's have them do it a year in advance and it makes clients very, very uncomfortable to do this. Rightfully so, right? Because it's different. I haven't done this in 30 years, but they're going to be doing it in 12 months and 18 months, whatever that time period is. And by simulating it now, we're going to flush out so many other problems, especially if we're reducing their income, right? If your income has to go down, man, we've got to be living on that today to really to make sure this is the right number.
I love that. Mike, I want to pivot just a little bit to technology and handouts as it relates to
Oh
this
yeah,
discussion, right? So when I sit down with a client, I know similar to you, we have a printout from Orion, our performance reporting software, so I can show them life to date or inception to date growth as a dollar amount, not a percentage. That way I can look and say, here's how many months of growth we've given up. And then I'll always have a printout of the guardrails. So we can look at the guardrails and say, here's where your portfolio is relative to these rails. Those are the only two pieces I need. Yes, I have some other things. Whatever our value add was for the quarter, maybe a piece of long-term economic commentary looking back at
sure.
bear markets for 30 years or something like that. But that's it. Those are my core foundation pieces. Clients always expect to see them. And again, when the bear markets come, I'm not pulling out something new they've never seen and they're saying, "Wait, why didn't I see this before? Why are you changing course?" Now, you might think, "Hey, that's not changing course. That's page 47 of the report instead of page 12." But for the client, why didn't this come up before? Why are we changing?
Right.
I'm always want to come back to the same thing again and again.
Yeah, it shows again that consistency, that reliability, right? They want a consistent
Mhm.
foundation with their financial plan. They don't want a lot of volatility, right? We don't. We love it when we get bonuses. We hate it when we owe money. Same concept right here that you want to have in the financial plans. And Jarvis, this last surge, we use our performance reporting like virtually zero, right? We
Yep.
have it as kind of our safety net when a question wants to come, my safety net when a question comes up. But the buckets report does such a solid job answering 99% of questions that are out there because what does a client want to know? Can I keep taking my income out, right? They really don't want to know how much is my portfolio grown or what my percentage rate of return is, right? So yes, there's some questions because they feel like they need to answer that, but I
Mhm.
think the issue behind the issue is can I keep spending what I'm spending? That's the real question in here. Am I still on track for retirement? That's the question and that's what I want to get to as quickly as I can.
Yeah, and that's what I want the client to focus on because, Micah, to your earlier point, in my heart of hearts, I want them to be successful in retirement. If we get focused in on the growth gain or loss that month, if we get focused in on the percentage gain or loss for that month or year, we're focused on the wrong thing. Same reason why we beat up on risk tolerance questionnaires. I don't want the client to focus on making a bad emotional decision when the markets are down. I want them to
Right.
focus on we have a plan and we're sticking to the plan no matter what.
I love it. All right, let's transition to some fun action items, right? Because this podcast is all about taking action and making your practice to the next level. So, great way to push your practice to the next level. XYPN has actually asked us, Jarvis and I, to come to their conference. We're going to do a live event with them. So, we're going to do a pre conference event and we're going to be on a panel of success. So, make sure you sign up now for your tickets. I know that stuff is going fast. So, you can jump on our website at theperfectria.com and make sure you get signed up.
Yeah, we're excited. Our good friend Benjamin Brandt is going to be there with us as
Right.
well as Stephen Jarvis from Retirement Tax Services. Action item number two: figure out what your foundational communication piece is. What is the piece that you're going to have in every meeting? Is it, Micah, your buckets report that you get out of your custom CRM? Is it the guardrails that we get out of the Invictus toolkit? What is your one go-to? And it can be from any software, but it needs to be a one pager that you could, if pressed, draw it in crayon next to it and not lose any of the core message.
I love it. What and the other thing, third action item I'm going to put on there is, does your team know how this works?
Oh, that's a
Right?
good one.
This is super, super important. If your client calls in, know your client, your team should not be communicating performance reports to your clients,
No,
right?
no.
Absolutely agreed with that. But they need to have the conviction and not the concern in their voice. Market drops 20%. Your receptionist is scared on the phone because the market dropped 20% about her own 401k. What message does that convey to your clients? Your team needs to know how this works. They have to be drinking the Kool-Aid. So you should be doing financial planning for your team, by the way, but you should also make sure any value add you have, go through with them
Mhm.
how it affects them, because then it becomes real, right? It takes it from theoretical, oh, we give this information to clients, to saying, oh no, this is directly how it affects you on your taxes, on your retirement income, on your insurance decisions, right? Now it makes it real. Now your receptionist, whoever's on your phone, your ops person, can answer that with conviction in their voice and they're not ruffled when the markets are volatile.
Boy, Micah, that's an entire episode right there, right? Do you have guardrails in place for your practice? Does your team know what kind of reserves that you have, right? Are
So
they seeing
great.
the market going down? They're seeing a client account values go down. And then are they thinking, oh no, is my job next, right? And again, they're human too. So they're going straight to the worst case scenario. The market's off 5%. We're all getting fired on Tuesday. You've got to make sure, Micah, to your point, that that's in there. And especially in times of turmoil. So back in like March when the COVID crisis was going on, I was sitting down with the team on a regular basis. How's everyone feeling about this? What are your
Yep.
thoughts? What are your concerns? You've got to suss those out because, Micah, to your point, if they get on the phone and imagine the pilot on the airplane. I always use this example. He gets there's some turbulence and the pilot comes out like, "Oh, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what the hell's going on up here." I'd be pretty worried. Instead, he comes out. He's like, "Well, ladies and gentlemen, it sounds like we've got some bumps along the way." It's just like there's no big deal.
Normal.
Even if there's every red light in the cockpit's on, he's like, "Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have to do an abrupt landing here."
That's right. Great news is we do these all the time. There's nothing to worry
Nothing
about.
to worry about, Micah. I love it. Well, for all of our listeners, final action item: be sure to share this podcast. We're up to 40 or 50,000 downloads a month. It's really making a difference in the industry. And if this podcast has made a difference for you in your practice and your client's life, pass the word along. There are advisors just like you and I, like Micah, who need to learn from other great advisors. Pass this message along, share it in your social media, add another 5-star review on Apple or wherever you listen to podcasts. And Mike, I think until next time, happy planning.
Happy planning.